The moment I heard that gavel hit the wood, I knew my 3-year nightmare was finally over. We the jury find the defendant guilty on all counts. I watched Bradley collapse into his chair like someone had cut his strings. His hands were shaking so violently, he couldn't even grip the table. Sweat was pouring down his face, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw something I'd never seen before, fear in his eyes. The courtroom erupted. Someone behind me whispered, "I can't believe it, $20 million. Another voice said, "His own business partner. How could he do that?" The handcuffs clicked shut around Bradley's wrists, and I felt something I hadn't felt in so long I'd forgotten what it was like. This man thought he'd gotten away with the perfect crime. He thought he'd destroyed my life, stolen my company, and left me with nothing. But karma had been watching for 3 years. And karma never forgets. As they led him away, Bradley looked at me one last time. The same man who'd been my best friend since college. The same man who'd stood as best man at my wedding. The same man who'd convinced everyone that I was the criminal. But to understand how we got here, how my best friend became my worst enemy, and how justice finally caught up with a man who thought he was untouchable, we need to go back to where it all began. Bradley and I met freshman year at MIT. 2 kids from nowhere with big dreams and even bigger appetites for late-night pizza and coding marathons. We'd sit in that cramped dorm room until 3 a.m., building apps that we swore would change the world. "One day, we're going to have our own company," Bradley would say, fingers flying across his laptop. 50-50 partners. No secrets, no bullshit. And for 10 years, that's exactly what we had. We built data flow solutions from nothing. Literally nothing. Our first office was Bradley's garage. Our first employees were college interns we paid in experience and energy drinks. But we believed in each other, trusted each other completely. Then we landed it. The contract that changed everything. $3.7 million from a Fortune 500 company to revolutionize their data management system. I remember the moment we got the call. Bradley grabbed me, we both started screaming, and his neighbors probably thought we'd lost our minds. "We did it, man," he said, tears in his eyes. "We actually did it." We celebrated that night like we'd won the lottery. In a way, we had. Both our names went on every account. We shared passwords, access codes, everything. There was no his money or my money. It was our money, our dream, our future. But something changed after that contract. Bradley started staying late more often, handling the books personally. When I'd ask about expenses or budget reports, he'd wave me off. "Don't worry about the boring stuff," he'd say. "You focus on the tech. I'll handle the business side." I trusted him. That was my mistake. 3 months later, I was reviewing our quarterly reports when I saw it. A series of transfers I didn't recognize. Money flowing to accounts I'd never seen before. My stomach dropped like I'd stepped off a cliff. "Bradley," I said, walking into his office with the printouts. "What are these transactions?" He barely looked up from his screen. "Just moving money around for tax purposes. Trust me, I'm handling it. Trust me." Those 2 words should have been my warning. But I pushed harder, started digging deeper. The more I looked, the sicker I felt. $2 million. Gone. Transferred to offshore accounts, shell companies, places I couldn't trace. When I confronted him the second time, Bradley looked me straight in the eye and lied with the ease of someone who'd been practicing. "I moved that money to protect us," he said. "There's an audit coming. I'm just making sure everything's clean." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But then I found the emails. The ones from his personal account, detailing how to make it look like I was the one stealing. How to plant evidence in my computer. How to create a paper trail that led straight to my door. The worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing that while I'd been trusting him with my life, he'd been planning to destroy it. My best friend, my brother, had been setting me up for months. And when the FBI showed up at my door 3 weeks later, I finally understood just how good Bradley was at playing the long game. The FBI doesn't knock politely. They kicked down my front door at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning while my kids were eating cereal before school. Federal agents. Search warrant. I'll never forget the look on my 8-year-old daughter's face as 6 men in bulletproof vests stormed through our living room. My wife Sarah grabbed the kids, pulling them close while agents tore through our home like we were harboring terrorists. "Daddy, what's happening?" my son whispered. I had no answer, because I honestly didn't know. They seized everything. Computers, phones, bank statements, even my daughter's tablet, because it had our family photos on it. The lead agent read me my rights while my neighbors watched from their windows. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement of corporate funds." By noon, it was everywhere. Tech startup founder accused of embezzling $2 million. My face was plastered across every business news site, every local channel. The comments section was brutal. "Another greedy CEO. Hope he rots in prison. What about his employees?" My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, former clients, investors, everyone wanted a statement. But my lawyer told me to say nothing. So I watched my reputation burn in silence. The worst part was watching Bradley on the news that evening. He looked devastated, betrayed, heartbroken. The performance was flawless. "I trusted him completely," he said, shaking his head. "We were like brothers. I never thought he was capable of something like this. I feel responsible for not catching it sooner. Even I almost believed him. Sarah stopped looking at me the same way. Not accusingly, but with this awful uncertainty. Like she was seeing a stranger. Did you do it? She asked me one night, 3 weeks after the arrest. No, I said. I swear to God I didn't. She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. When your own wife questions your innocence, you know you're in hell. The legal fees were crushing us. $50,000 for the retainer. Another $30,000 for the forensic accountant. Every week brought a new bill, a new expert, a new reason to drain our savings account. I was radioactive in the tech world. Calls went unreturned. Emails bounced back. A recruiter I'd known for years told me flat out, nobody's going to touch you until this is resolved. And even then, friends stopped calling. Colleagues crossed the street to avoid me. The isolation was suffocating. 6 months after the arrest, I found myself sitting alone in a studio apartment that cost more per month than my mortgage used to. Sarah had taken the kids to her mother's temporarily. Our house was gone, sold to pay legal fees. My car was repossessed. I stared at that bottle of sleeping pills for 3 hours one night, counted them, wondered if anyone would even notice if I just disappeared. But then I got angry, really angry, because I realized something that made my blood boil. The evidence against me was too perfect, the paper trail too clean, the timing too convenient. Bradley hadn't just stolen from me. He'd been planning this for months, maybe years. Every late night, every trust me. Every time he'd insisted on handling the finances alone, it was all part of setting me up. My best friend had methodically destroyed my life, and he'd made it look like justice. That's when I decided I wasn't going down without a fight. While I was stocking shelves at a grocery store to pay my legal bills, Bradley was living like a king. The first thing he did was rebrand the company. Dataflow Solutions became Bradley Tech Innovations. My name disappeared from the website, the company history, even the patents I'd helped develop. 10 years of my life erased with a few clicks. But that wasn't enough for him. I was unloading boxes of cereal at 5 a.m. when I saw his face on the morning news. Tech Entrepreneur of the Year, the banner read. There was Bradley, in a $1,000 suit, accepting an award for innovative leadership and ethical business practices. I'm just glad I discovered his embezzlement before it was too late, he said during his acceptance speech. It taught me that success means nothing if you don't have integrity. The audience gave him a standing ovation. I threw up in the grocery store bathroom. His Instagram became a monument to success. Pictures of his new mansion in the hills, 8 bedrooms, infinity pool, 3-car garage. The Ferrari he bought for weekend drives. The private jet trips to Monaco, Dubai, the Maldives. Every post came with some inspirational quote about removing toxic people from your life, about how betrayal makes you stronger, about surrounding yourself with winners. He started appearing on podcasts, telling his story of how he overcame corporate betrayal, how he'd learned to trust his instincts about people, how he'd rebuilt after his partner's criminal behavior nearly destroyed everything. The hosts ate it up. You're such an inspiration, Bradley. How do you move forward after such a personal betrayal? You focus on the future, he'd say. You don't let other people's choices define you. I wanted to scream every time I heard it. But the cruelest cut came when I saw the photo. Bradley at a charity gala, donating $500,000 to a children's hospital. My money. The money he'd stolen from me, from our company, from our employees' futures. And standing next to him, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear, was Jessica, my ex-girlfriend from college. The one who dumped me when I got too serious about the business. The caption read, Power couple giving back. #blesslife, #paying it forward. I was making $12 an hour and sleeping on a friend's couch. Bradley was being photographed with the mayor, shaking hands with senators, building an empire on the ruins of my life. The worst part wasn't the money or the recognition. It was watching him hire my former employees. People I'd mentored, trained, believed in. They were working for him now, helping him build his success story. When I ran into one of them at a coffee shop, he couldn't even look me in the eye. I'm sorry, man, he said. I needed the job. I've got a family to feed. I didn't blame him. I blamed the system that let criminals wear crowns while their victims wore handcuffs. I thought about going to the press, telling my side of the story. But who would believe me? I was the guy facing 20 years in federal prison. Bradley was the victim who'd overcome adversity and built something beautiful. Every night, I'd lie awake thinking about justice, about truth, about how the wrong person was being punished while the guilty one got richer and more powerful. Bradley wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing my legacy, my reputation, my future. And he was doing it with a smile that said he knew he was untouchable. That's when I realized I needed more than just anger. I needed a plan. And I needed help from someone Bradley would never see coming. I should have known something was wrong when Sarah suddenly decided to go back to school. I want to get my accounting degree, she announced one morning, 6 months after my arrest. I need to understand money better. For the family. At the time, I thought it was her way of taking control after watching our finances collapse. But looking back, I should have questioned why a woman who'd never shown interest in numbers suddenly wanted to become a forensic accountant. The questions started small. Innocent. Almost supportive. When you and Bradley set up the company accounts, who had access to what? She'd ask over dinner. I'm just trying to understand how this happened. Or, did Bradley ever mention using cryptocurrency for transactions? I'm learning about it in class. I thought she was trying to help. I thought she was being a supportive wife, trying to understand my case so she could stand by me. I was half right. The arguments got worse as my trial approached. She'd stay out late, claiming she was studying. She'd take phone calls in the other room, saying they were about school projects. She started questioning every expense, every legal strategy, every decision I made. Maybe you should take the plea deal, she'd say. Think about the kids. I'm innocent, I'd tell her. I won't confess to something I didn't do. She'd get this look in her eyes. Not anger. Something else. Something I couldn't identify. The night before my trial was supposed to start, I couldn't sleep. I wandered into the kitchen and found Sarah sitting at the laptop, working on spreadsheets. Financial documents I didn't recognize. Phone records. Bank statements. What are you working on? I asked. She slammed the laptop shut. School project. That's when I knew. I waited until she fell asleep, then opened her laptop. The password was my birthday. At least that much was real. But what I found inside made my blood run cold. FBI case files. Recorded conversations. Financial analysis reports. And at the top of every document, Agent Sarah Chun, Financial Crimes Division. My wife was a federal agent. My wife was a federal agent, and she'd been investigating me. No, not me. Bradley. I scrolled through months of evidence. Years of it. Phone recordings where Bradley bragged about framing me. Financial records showing exactly how he'd moved the money. Witness statements from employees who'd seen him planting evidence on my computer. Sarah had been building a case against Bradley since before my arrest. She'd been recruited by the FBI after they realized I might be innocent. Her career change was cover. Her late nights were surveillance. Her questions weren't about understanding my case. They were about building theirs. She'd been working to save me while I thought she was abandoning me. I woke her up at 3 a.m. How long have you known? I asked. She looked at me with those eyes I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. But now I saw something else in them. Relief. Since the beginning, she said. The FBI approached me 2 weeks after your arrest. They had suspicions about Bradley, but they needed someone on the inside to gather evidence. Someone he trusted. Why didn't you tell me? Because you're a terrible liar, she said with a sad smile. And because if this was going to work, it had to be real. Your anger, your desperation, your sense of betrayal. Bradley had to believe it was genuine. She showed me everything. 3 years of recorded conversations. Financial trails that led straight to Bradley's personal accounts. Testimony from former employees who'd been threatened into silence. Evidence of bribes, cover-ups, and witness intimidation. We've been building a federal case that's going to put him away for 20 years, she said. But we need one more thing. We need him to confess on tape. We need him to admit he framed you. How do we do that? Sarah smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw hope in her eyes. We make him think he's won. We make him think you're finally beaten. And then we get him to gloat about it. After 3 years of feeling powerless, of watching my life crumble while Bradley built his empire, I finally had something I'd almost forgotten existed. I had a plan, and I had a partner who'd been fighting for me all along. The meeting was Bradley's idea. He called me directly, which should have been my first clue that something was different. I've been thinking, he said, his voice smooth as ever. Maybe we can work something out. Meet me at the old office tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone. I knew what this was. Bradley wanted to gloat. He wanted to see me broken, defeated, ready to crawl back to him begging for mercy. He had no idea he was walking into a trap. I adjusted the wire under my shirt for the 10th time as I walked into our old building. The same place where we'd celebrated our first $1 million contract. Where we dreamed of changing the world. Now it was going to be where Bradley's world ended. He was waiting in the conference room, looking like he owned the place. Which technically he did. $1,000 suit, perfectly styled hair, that confident smirk that had been haunting my nightmares. You look terrible, he said, gesturing to a chair. Prison food not agreeing with you? I'm not in prison yet, I replied, sitting down. Yet being the key word. He poured himself a glass of wine from an expensive bottle. Your trial starts next week. How are you feeling about your chances? I let the silence hang. In my earpiece, I could hear Sarah's voice. He's confident. Let him talk. I have to admit, Bradley continued, I'm impressed you held out this long. Most people would have taken the plea deal by now. I didn't do anything wrong. Bradley laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, come on. We're alone here. You can drop the act. What act? The innocent act. The victim act. The I was framed act. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. You want to know the truth? I've been planning this for 2 years. 2 years of setting you up, moving pieces into place, making sure when the hammer fell, it would fall on you. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. Why? Because you were holding me back, he said, taking another sip of wine. You were content with our little company, our little dreams. But I wanted more. I wanted everything. And I couldn't get there with a partner who was satisfied with mediocrity. So you decided to destroy me. I decided to remove an obstacle. He stood up, pacing now, caught up in his own story. Do you know how easy it was? A few fake transactions, some planted evidence, a couple of well-placed phone calls. The FBI practically gift-wrapped the case for me. What about our friendship? What about everything we built together? Bradley's expression turned cold. Friendship is a luxury I couldn't afford. You were naive enough to trust me completely. Shared passwords, joint accounts, blind faith in your best friend. You made it so easy. And now I'm a success story. The entrepreneur who overcame betrayal. The victim who turned tragedy into triumph. He raised his glass in a mock toast. To you, for making it all possible. I stood up slowly. There's just one thing you got wrong. What's that? You assumed I was here alone. The conference room door opened, and Sarah walked in. Bradley's face went from confusion to recognition to absolute terror in about 3 seconds. You remember my wife, don't you? I said. She's been recording everything. What are you talking about? Bradley stammered, but I could see the understanding dawning in his eyes. Agent Sarah Chun, FBI Financial Crimes Division, Sarah said, showing her badge. Bradley Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The door burst open and 6 FBI agents flooded in. Bradley's wine glass hit the floor and shattered. This is impossible, he whispered. This is impossible. You have the right to remain silent, Agent Martinez said, cuffing him. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Wait, Bradley shouted, looking at me desperately. We can work this out. We can make a deal. I'll split everything with you. Too late for that, I said. You destroyed my life, ruined my reputation, took everything I cared about. But karma never forgets, Bradley. And karma just caught up with you. As they led him away, Bradley looked back at me one last time. Gone was the confident businessman, the successful entrepreneur, the man who thought he was untouchable. All I saw was a scared, broken criminal who'd finally been caught. How long were you recording? He asked weakly. Sarah held up her phone. Every word. Including the part where you confessed to planning my husband's frame-up for 2 years. The last thing I heard as they dragged him away was Bradley screaming. You can't do this to me. I'm a success story. I'm a victim. But the only victim in that room was justice. And justice had finally been served. And that brings us back to where we started. That courtroom. That gavel. That moment when Bradley's world finally collapsed. 20 years in federal prison. Full restitution of $23 million. Asset forfeiture of everything he'd bought with stolen money. The judge didn't just throw the book at him. She threw the entire library. The defendant's actions, she said, represent a profound betrayal of trust that goes beyond simple theft. He systematically destroyed an innocent man's life for personal gain. Bradley's appeal was denied. His assets were seized. His mansion, his cars, his artwork, all of it sold at auction to pay back what he'd stolen. Jessica left him before the trial even ended, taking half of what little he had left. But the real justice wasn't in the sentencing. It was in what happened next. The industry that had blacklisted me came crawling back with apologies. Speaking engagements, consulting offers, investment opportunities. Everyone wanted to be associated with the man who'd survived corporate betrayal and fought back. Sarah and I rebuilt our marriage stronger than ever. The kids finally understood why mommy had been so distant. She'd been fighting to save daddy's reputation. We moved back into a house, then a bigger house, then a house with a pool where my kids could be kids again. I started a new company. Not just to replace what Bradley had stolen, but to build something better. Something honest. Dataflow Solutions 2.0, but this time with transparency built into every process, every decision, every partnership. Within 2 years, we were bigger than the original company ever was. Within 5 years, we'd revolutionized data security for half the Fortune 500. The betrayal that was supposed to destroy me had actually freed me to build something incredible. Bradley, meanwhile, discovered that federal prison doesn't treat white-collar criminals kindly, especially ones who destroyed families and stole millions. His cellmate was a convicted murderer who didn't appreciate fancy business degrees. He wrote me letters from prison, begging for forgiveness, asking me to put money in his commissary account, claiming he'd found God and wanted to make amends. I never responded. Some betrayals are too deep for forgiveness. His parents stopped visiting after the first year. His lawyers stopped taking his calls after the second. By year 3, Bradley Morrison, the man who'd once graced magazine covers and keynote stages, was just another forgotten inmate in an orange jumpsuit. The final irony? The charity work he'd done with my stolen money, the children's hospital donation, the scholarship fund, the community center, it all had to be returned. Even his attempts at buying a positive legacy were built on lies. Last I heard, he was working in the prison kitchen for 37 cents an hour, washing dishes and mopping floors. The same hands that had once signed million-dollar contracts were now scrubbing pots. Karma doesn't just catch up with you. It compounds with interest. Looking back, I realized that Bradley's betrayal, as devastating as it was, actually saved me from something worse. A lifetime of partnership with someone who would have eventually destroyed everything we built anyway. He showed me who he really was, and in doing so, he set me free to become who I was meant to be. The deepest betrayals often come from those closest to us. The people we trust most have the power to hurt us most. But here's what I learned. Justice may be delayed, but it's never denied. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Just ask Bradley. If you can find him in the prison laundry room, he'll tell you all about it. After all, he's got 20 years to think about what he did. And karma? Karma's got a long memory.